Hi everyone, it's 5 o'clock, back into the main studio, main stage for our final couple of sessions. Thanks for joining us. We've got a couple of great sessions to follow in the next hour and a half. So I hope you've had a good day. I've just been in the networking session about accessibility champions networks, which was fantastic. Great to hear so many people being inspired and connected to each other. You know, the bringing people together and getting them to share stories and swap resources and links, and genuinely, I think, to feel encouraged that we're sort of headed in the right direction and that we're not alone. So that was fantastic, a real spirit of togetherness in there and community, and great to see Charlie offering to help build that network of networks, which I think will be a fantastic thing to look forward to in 2021. So first up in this session now, we've got a chat between Henrik from Tobii, Alexander from Be My Eyes, and Emma, and I think Emma from, hello Emma.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I've had 3 brilliant days. Just we've had some fantastic discussions, but I'm really looking forward to this one as well. It's that rehearsal we had with Henrik and Alexander just whetted the appetite really for what we're gonna hear. So and how about you? Are you busy at the moment? Have you got full on with lots of work and you're building your new service and so on?
Yeah, building my empire. Yes, it's intense but great fun. Really enjoying it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, without further ado, I'm going to let you hand over and join Henrik and Alexander. I really look forward to hearing what we've got to say to each other.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone. I'm here with Henrik and Alexander. Should we just do a quick round of introductions first, in case anyone doesn't know who we are? Let's start with Henrik, if that's all right.
Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Henrik Eskilsson, and I am the CEO and one of the founders of Tobii.
And my name is Alexander Hauslev Jensen, and I'm the CCO of Be My Eyes.
And hello, I'm the chair today, and I'm Emma Lawton. I'm the co-founder of More Human. At More Human, we're trying to bring groups of people together by taking out the financial, time and inclusion barriers to make events possible for everyone. I was actually diagnosed with Parkinson's 7 years ago, so I have sort of a vested interest from that point of view as well in accessibility. And I was the inspiration for Microsoft's The Emma Watch, which helps with Parkinson's tremor. So hello everyone, and welcome to my 2 fantastic, exciting guests. We're going to talk a little bit today about inclusion and sort of all the things to do with kind of commerciality of it. I'm basically someone who's building a startup with social good at the heart of it, and it's got massive commercial potential as well, but I'm finding it quite difficult to balance the commerciality and the sort of the good it will do for people, and how to kind of get it out into the market. So I'm kind of really interested to talk to you 2 about this a little bit. What's your experience been of this challenge when you come to kind of try to be taken seriously when you're creating kind of accessible, inclusive tech, when it comes to things like investment or how you appear to the kind of different markets you're trying to approach? How have you dealt with that? Henrik first, if that's okay.
Sure, Emma. I mean, in Tobii, we actually didn't start with accessibility as sort of one of the fields that we work with. We started working with, what we do in Tobii is we provide eye tracking technology, and we do that for a lot of different fields. And we actually started in other fields in accessibility. And then we were early on approached by some experts in the field of accessibility who saw our technology and recognized that there are some fantastic use cases for our technology in this field. And that made us very curious. But we actually approached it sort of from the beginning as a business opportunity for the technology that we had. And then we have had the opportunity and the fortune to learn all the fantastic things about the world of accessibility and inclusion with our products and solutions. So I think we came into it maybe a little bit easier because we sort of had a technology, and this was actually a really good use for this technology where we could do a lot of good with it.
I was really intrigued by that, actually, to know which way around you'd come to do it, whether there was, you know, whether it was the inclusive tech first, or you kind of saw a use case with more general consumer market, or whether then you sort of did it the other way around. So that's really interesting to know that was the way around, because it feels very much like you have a great focus on that inclusivity now. So yeah, I'm really interested to hear that. Thank you.
I mean, today the accessibility is the largest part of our business today. So it's definitely an area where there are, I mean, obviously it is a truly amazing opportunity to actually build products, build solutions that have a positive impact on people and on society. I think everybody in Tobii, and I think everybody who works in a similar field is really, really proud of this. But it's also, I think, really interesting to see that it's really today possible to actually develop and create fairly large businesses and operations that focus on providing solutions to solve issues and challenges with accessibility and inclusion.
I think that's the really interesting point, is actually if you spoke to someone outside of this sort of area of interest, that actually people might not believe that that was the case. That actually there was enough people out there to warrant it being a big business. I think that's the thing people sometimes don't really understand.
I think you're right. That's my experience as well. Just talking to investors, for instance, you have to give them some numbers to actually make them understand that in a global way. I mean, there's part of this is that today all businesses can be global. So even though maybe it's a relatively small percentage of a population that has a particular special need, when you can address a business globally on the planet, there's still a lot of people with that particular need.
Yeah, it's very true. Something I've noticed quite interestingly with them, Be My Eyes, Alexander, that actually they've won a lot of awards. And I noticed kind of early on in the sort of earlier days, I noticed they were kind of maybe more sort of accessibility or kind of health related awards. And those have become more sort of mainstream over the years. You're actually winning awards that are just good tech or just good solutions. And I wonder how that must feel.
Right. No, that feels great. And I think a little opposite to Henrik, we started out with accessibility as the core of what we're doing. The purpose was at the core. And because what we're doing is like offering this free service that allows people who are blind or low vision to lead more independent lives by connecting to volunteers on one side and then companies on the other. And one thing that we kind of wanted to change pretty early on was that it seems that there was such a difference between purpose and profit. And we kind of want to change that perspective a little bit and say, no, this is actually about the interplay between purpose and profit. It's two factors that accelerate each other, not slow each other down. Mm-hmm. So it's and I think that's also reflected in like what you just mentioned, but where our focus in the beginning was very much focused on our purpose and providing accessibility. But we realized to do that we really need the profits. And the other way around, so it can't be at the expense of one of these two, and there kind of has to be an interplay. The more profits, the more purpose. The more purpose, the more profits. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of been our model and how we have developed.
That's fascinating. Actually, I think that's a really good point about that kind of link. And I think a lot of people separate the two out and see them as maybe very different audiences or very different sort of needs. So yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, Henrik, Tobii's been going since 2001. What was there in the way of competition back in 2001 for this sort of thing? And how much has sort of changed since then?
Eye tracking technology was pretty much science fiction back in 2001. And of course, we thought that we invented this kind of technology ourselves. We later found out that others had invented it before us. So there was actually competition in the technology field, but it was actually mainly used in very niche areas in psychology and neurology research, for instance. And when we started Tobii, our sort of idea from the beginning was we want to revolutionize the world by putting eye tracking technology into every computer and bring this to consumer mass market and change the way all of us interact with technology, which was, of course, 19 years ago, a totally crazy and naive idea, which wasn't at all possible at the time. But actually, it's funny because today we're coming back today. Today, we're working a lot with bringing this technology into consumer mass market. But we, of course, had to find these early applications that could actually make use of this technology, even when it was much less mature. It was more expensive. It maybe didn't work perfectly. It was kind of big and clunky. And this is also where we, after working on it for a few years and building up our first business with the technology was actually providing solutions to researchers to understand behavior using eye tracking. But then again, the accessibility field has been definitely one of those areas that has been a natural early adopter market for a technology like this. And it's been an opportunity for us to evolve and grow as a company, but also for the technology to mature and develop to a point where actually today it is becoming applicable to all of us in consumer devices.
Definitely, and I can see some similarities there between sort of Be My Eyes as well, with the fact that actually sort of technology that maybe was designed for one thing but it actually has multiple uses. I think that's the best kind of technology, isn't it, really, when you can kind of, there's so many different routes to market with it, so many different people you can help and so many different kind of outcomes, because I mean I'm sure there's probably other uses for Be My Eyes as well as what it's actually used for currently.
Yeah, I think so. It's I think this model of micro volunteering, of connecting people who need assistance with people who can provide that assistance. Our focus is mainly on blindness, colorblind, low vision, dyslexia, all visual impairments. But the technology and the model can basically be used to connect car enthusiasts with each other, because one part of the community has some knowledge and the other one needs that knowledge. So it's connecting them on like a micro volunteering basis is super interesting model, I think.
Alex, can't you take it? Would it be okay to just explain how the business model works? Because we mentioned that briefly before, and I thought that was really interesting to just understand your business model.
Absolutely. So when we started, we had no idea how to make Be My Eyes into a sustainable thing. We launched this mobile app connecting our blind users with volunteers only. And from day one, we just realized the money is not in charging the users, because we don't want to put up any barriers to using the application. It has to be free. And it's our responsibility to figure out, how are we going to make this into a sustainable thing? How are we able to grow, provide a quality service and all these things without charging our users, without putting ads in front of our users? And to be honest, it took quite a while to crack the nut, because we didn't want to grab any of these low-hanging fruits. And what inspired our business model and our approach to like deciding which monetization strategy to go with was this postcard. I don't know if it's the same where you're based, but in Denmark at least, when you go into a cafe, you have these like free postcards that you can grab, and it's from companies sponsoring all kinds of different things. And I grabbed one of these postcards, and on it says, because only everybody wins when nobody loses. And we're like, that sounds nice. That should be our design sentence. This is the sentence that we should use when figuring out how to monetize. And so a few years goes on, and we realize all of a sudden that our volunteering network is great for so many different things. But for sometimes you just need to talk to an expert. Sometimes you need to talk to a company directly. So we created what we call specialized help, that allows companies and organizations to connect with the low vision community through the Be My Eyes app. So it's like accessible customer support through live video. Microsoft was the first company to join, and they were followed by Google and Procter & Gamble and some banks and a lot of other big companies in this year, pharmacies, voting, COVID testing, all kinds of different organizations are there to support the community. The companies, they pay to provide the service to the community. This is still completely free. And we're really excited about that, because it really follows our mantra, because no one is losing here. The users are able to get the support that they need. The companies are able to provide an accessible support to this community of millions and millions and millions of people, and we're able to provide as a free service and build a sustainable business. So that's kind of how we have gotten to monetization. So as I said in the beginning, we started out with like pure like purpose, accessibility is all that matters, but realizing we need to figure out how to make this into a sustainable way, in a way that makes sense to the community.
I think that's the biggest challenge, isn't it? I mean, we often find sort of with More Human, because we're doing what is considered something good, people expect us to either do it for free. We want to do it for as free as possible. We don't want to have to charge for as much of it as possible. But actually, to keep something sustainable and to offer a great service, you often need to charge, or you need to make it someone's priority. You need to pay them to do a job. So it's quite a difficult kind of line to tread, I think, sometimes, to when people kind of expect things that are for good to be for free, and it's kind of trying to balance that kind of commerciality with and how you can keep things going for people.
I think that the lineup of this of TechShare Pro this year, with all of these industry leaders from huge companies, where accessibility is such a high priority, really shows that accessibility and purpose and doing the right thing goes hand in hand with creating sustainable big business, and it's actually a way to get there. So I'm really like hopeful for the future, because like there's so many smaller companies getting involved, but also that it's such a high priority for the biggest companies in the world.
That's really nice. Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point. I mean, it's becoming a higher priority. I think for a while it felt like it was a priority for sort of corporate social responsibility kind of purposes to say that people were doing it, but actually it feels like it's actually on the agenda properly now, and that actually products are being built with people in mind a lot more. I think that's something we have in common between our sort of three businesses, is the fact that actually humans are very much at the heart, and technology is sort of a supporting role. I mean, if you look at More Human, we're basically using technology to bring groups of people together. So it's kind of, I guess, spending more time with other humans because of the support of technology. Whereas with Toby, it's kind of humans having the basic right of communication with other humans by using technology. And Be My Eyes is humans helping humans via technology. So it's sort of, I think there's some interesting kind of the balance between what role the human takes and what role the technology takes in any relationship is quite important in all our businesses, I think.
I think it's actually part of almost like a meta trend that if you go back 20, 30 years ago, technology was kind of clunky, and it was expected that we human beings, we figured out how to use the technology, and if we couldn't do it right, we were kind of stupid or something. Whereas I think today, when you're in like the big corporations that actually provide products or services, etc., based on technology, it's actually what's winning. The companies that are winning are not the ones that can develop a technology with the most horsepower, but the one who's winning is actually the one who can develop the best user experience and the most human user experience, and who's actually best at sort of augmenting and enabling us as human beings in different ways. And I think in that part as well, it's not, of course, then enabling just a few of us or some of us, but actually all of us, no matter what shape and color and capability and et cetera we come into. And I think it is truly genuinely becoming important also for these very large corporations. Companies like, for instance, take a Microsoft or a Google, they need to address very large corporations with all of the diverse workforces that they have with their tools. And they need to address schools and have solutions that are applicable and usable by all sorts of children in these schools and all sorts of teachers in these schools. So if they actually want to be relevant with their products, they have to be inclusive and accessible today.
Definitely.
And I think this is just a sort of an inevitable part of an evolution of mankind in many ways, actually.
I as someone with a condition, I kind of feel like it's my sort of superpower in a way. And I feel like something like Parkinson's is a real difficult kind of challenge because there's so many symptoms, but also side effects of the medication. And I feel like almost I'm sort of the perfect user tester, because actually I have so many symptoms that span other products that I can kind of test many things and be quite useful in that sense. But I think, yeah, involving kind of people is just such a huge part of everything everyone does nowadays. It's become, it used to be a buzzword, it used to be a kind of a trend, but I think actually people have realized if you're not designing for the people with the biggest challenges, then you're not really designing for a massive group. That kind of group of people is considered an important group now, and an important part of the market, which is becoming more so like that, which is great.
Yeah, and I think just building on that, Emma, I think that when we talk about that group, that is of course like right now I think 15%, about 1 billion people, and 1 out of 7, which is of course a huge number. But that's also that's the snapshot of what it is like right now. We say that there are people with accessibility needs, people with disabilities, and then there are those who haven't experienced theirs yet. And I think that sentence is so powerful because it means that we will all need these technologies at some point. So as a business, I really don't understand why we don't design, even if we strip away all of the compassionate arguments for investing in accessibility. If it's only like a super selfish decision, I don't see why it's not the easiest decision to make it more accessible and inclusive, because it's going to affect ourselves at the end of the day. And luckily, like more and more companies, as we all agree on, are starting to focus more and more on this group, being at the end of the day probably all of us. And I think if the ones who are not, they're really, I think they're gonna lose. I think it's not designing in an inaccessible way. It's not designing for the future. So if I was an investor, if I was someone who is putting money in the market, I would go for the companies that invest in building technologies and solutions for the future. And that's why I think accessibility is becoming such a more than the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do also from a business standpoint.
Very, really good point. And I think, I mean, whoever said I don't want this because it's too accessible? Whoever ever said that? I mean, the accessible design. I remember I'm a graphic designer as well, and I remember maybe 10 years or so ago, accessible design was something I didn't want to have to do because it looks so ugly. And actually, designing products and things like that have always been a challenge to make them kind of beautiful or things that people would actually want to covet, but actually at the same time functional. And I think the tech has really come on so that actually you can be proud of something and kind of own it, and it feel not like a clunky piece of that sort of NHS grey kind of blue colour, that plastic things that used to be made of in the past. Everything's kind of works better and looks better and actually something that you want to own. And I think who doesn't like something that's accessible and works well? I mean, even if you have no challenges yet, as you're saying, you may have challenges before. I remember seeing a talk by Hector at Minto a number of years ago, where he said all of us at some point are disabled. Whether it's we're holding our child while we're doing something else, that's one arm that's not free. You've got one arm left to use. And I think it's a really interesting point that actually you don't know what you're going to face in your future. No one really knows. And I think at some point we all have challenges that we need that little bit of help, a bit more accessibility help, don't we, really?
Yeah, the field that we are in on the accessibility side is using eye tracking through eye-controlled computers, which enables people with a speech impairment to communicate effectively. And this is often referred to as AAC, or augmentative and alternative communication. And that's an interesting term, augmentative and alternative communication, because all of us can be augmented in our ability to communicate in different ways. So exactly as you say, I mean, one way to put it is we are all disabled at some part in our life. Yes, we probably are in certain situations or at some stage of life, but it's also the fact that we can all benefit from technology that is just more accessible, that is just so intuitive, or so helps us become an even better version of ourselves and actually empowering us as human beings to do more, to create more, etc. And then yes, maybe the delta benefit is larger for a person with a disability, but the benefit can still exist for all of us as well. And I think this is very much what we see when we actually have fertilized this technology in the accessibility field, but we can take some of those benefits and provide them to everyone. I mean, that transition is really interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I'd love to ask you for some advice, really. So what would you both, if you could give me advice to someone starting out on this journey, what would you say is the biggest thing you've learned during your time in this area, how to kind of grab people's attention, how to make people believe that it's a serious thing, that's a big business and things like that? How have you done that? Have you managed that?
I would say one thing that remember that, as I don't need to convince you, Emma, but that accessibility is not a niche. And I think that was one of the first things that we were struggling with when trying to raise money to build out the application and doing all these things. A lot of people were like, we don't know any people who are blind or have low vision. So is there even a market for this? So I think that's the first one, really understanding how to position this as a great market opportunity. I'll say the second one is staying really true to what your moral codex. I think that one of the things that we did, one of the hardest decisions that we made that was probably one of the best decisions that we made, was to keep the app completely free. I can tell you that running a mobile application for several years without having any idea how you're going to make money is not the easiest thing in the world, because when you talk to an investor, they'll probably ask you, so how's this gonna work? And we're like, actually, we have no idea, but we're confident that we're gonna figure it out. Don't worry. And that was only because we were like, we don't want to put up too many barriers to getting this technology in the hands of people. So, and that's maybe the main thing is, I think that an accessibility tool or an assistive technology tool is only accessible if it's also financially accessible.
That's a really good point.
And that can be difficult to figure out a model that really works. But being really patient and really trying not to pick the low-hanging fruits, because I think that's going to harm your long-term goals.
That's really, really good advice. Thank you. I mean, Henrik, 19 years ago, how did you get into this? How did this happen? I mean, there wasn't really that much tech around sort of at that time. I mean, you must have learned so much over that period of time.
Oh, absolutely. If I may tie to your previous question, like, I just want to chime in on what Alex said. I think one of the biggest sort of things or maybe advice is be persistent. Everyone starting a new business is met by a lot of skeptics, and we were definitely met by a lot of skeptics because our ideas were pretty crazy from the beginning. And you just have to, if you believe in what you're doing, you just have to be persistent, and you might have to bang your head against the wall quite a few times. I don't think that's specific for doing it in the accessibility field. I think that goes for any kind of entrepreneurship, etc. And it's just the same thing, really. And I actually remember when we started reaching out to some sales partners and resellers for our products in the accessibility field, they who were already experts in the field, they said, "Oh, I don't think there is a market for this." And we're like, "Yeah, we think there is actually, because this is doing something really good for people." So keep on being stubborn. And I sometimes say that if you're going to succeed as an entrepreneur, you probably need to have some level of brains. You need to have an immense amount of stubbornness, but you also need to be probably kind of naive, because if you actually understood how difficult it was going to be, you would never dare to do it in the first place.
I'm going to try and rebrand stubborn as a positive. I think stubborn is a really positive quality in kind of any environment. So I think it's often missold as a negative, but I think stubborn is something that gets people through life a lot of the time.
I think it does.
So sorry, I interjected the other question. But actually, I've kind of, we've got to end up in a little while. But we at the beginning we were asked to describe ourselves for the people that can't actually see us, and I forgot to mention that. So I know it's going to be at the end now, but if we could just describe ourselves so people can get a sense of who they've been listening to, that would be great. So I'm Emma. I have pink hair and I have Parkinson's, and that pretty much sums me up, I think. And I've got a neck brace on because I've hurt my neck. So sorry to describe this at the end rather than the beginning, and I wonder what you imagined us to be like when you couldn't see us. If you two wouldn't mind just describing yourself, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
All right. So Henrik here. I'm short. I have no hair, and I have a big smile on my face because I enjoy talking to you.
And my name is Alexander, and I am. I have a big swirl in my hair and right in the front. In Danish, it's called a cowlick. I don't even know what it's called in.
It's called a cowlick still as well, I think.
In English, but imagine like a big cow licked you in the face, and you end up with one of these really things in the forehead.
Great descriptions, thank you guys. So we've got a couple of minutes left. I don't know if there's anything you guys want to kind of talk about within that 2 minutes before we kind of have to finish up. But
I think one. You go, Alex.
I just, that's as a final thanks for your time. I just want to invite anyone into the Be Minds community, whether you're blind or low vision and you need a free tool, or if you are just someone who would like to volunteer, feel free to sign up alongside about 4.5 million other volunteers who are using it right now. Or if you work for a company that is looking to support your blind or low vision customers in a better way, feel free to check out Be Minds and join the community.
Fantastic, thank you. And sorry, did you want to say something, Henrik, as well?
Now I can say a thing. To all those engineers who might be listening in or thinking about being an entrepreneur or something, do something exciting in this field. There's so many opportunities to innovate, whether it's technology or businesses, etc. So do it in this area. That's my advice.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Emma. It's great talking to you. Thanks, Alex.
Good to see you again.
Hey, that was brilliant. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Henrik and Alexander. Always inspiring to hear from you, Alex, and all the journey you're on. And Henrik, that's fantastic. The legacy from Toby, Emma. That's what 20 years of incredible innovation, isn't it? Really, and the impact. So, share the one thing you think you're going to take away from that as a budding entrepreneur with your business, as you said, juggling left, right, and centre. Big theme. Sorry, yes. What's the tweet going to be?
I think I'm allowed two. That's the first thing I would say. Being stubborn is a good thing, and you have to be stubborn. And I'm going to tell my mum that because she often says I'm stubborn, and it's definitely a good thing. And I think the second thing is actually that you can have something that does good, but also is commercial. That actually the two things don't have to be interchangeable, and actually it's important for those two things to exist hand in hand for sustainability, really. So
fantastic. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the amazing impact that technology. That both of those organisations represent, the impact that technology is having on individual lives every day is huge, isn't it? And that's part of the equation, I think. So, well, anyway, thank you so much for joining us and agreeing to host that. I hope, like us, you've learned a lot from the session, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. So, we come to the final session. This is a chance to hear some voices from around the world, actually. About accessibility. We're part of a big community. There's a lot of people out there who are doing a lot of work on accessibility in lots of different ways. We've heard that for the last 3 days. So we just wanted to sort of finally pull together some of those voices from the different parts of the accessibility community. I'm going to ask if we can call it up. We're going to have they're in a Teams call here. There's a few of them. I can see we've got, who have we got? Oh, where's Christopher on here? Christopher Lee. Hi, Christopher. You can wave and say hi. So I'm going to leave you in Christopher's capable hands. He's he's from the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, and you'll see that there's a glittering array of other guests there. So I'm going to leave you to have a chat. I'm particularly interested in what you think is going to happen in 2021. But I know that all of you have had some interesting and challenging times in 2020 and risen to the challenge in lots of different ways. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you, Mark. This is Christopher Lee. I am the chair of the Accessibility Leadership Panel, and we are the last session for TechShare Pro 2020. Hands up, please. Great job, everyone. I tell you what, Mark, I hope you and the team get a lot of rest this weekend. We know it's been a challenging week, but you've done a spectacular job. So hats off, definitely, to you and the team. So we're going to start off with some introductions from the Rockstar group that I've got around here in Teams. This is pretty informal. We've got some questions that I'll pull in, and we're going to have the participants just come in and say a few words. If it was some silence, I'll call on somebody. Please put your questions in the chat or the Q&A if you've got some of those, and we'll try to pull some of those in. We've got about 40 minutes, so let's get started. Yuval, I'm going to start with you.
Lucky one to start. So
Yes.
A great pleasure to be at this session with all you accessibility leaders. I'm myself, Yuval Wagner. I'm a quadriplegic. I'm confined to a wheelchair, and I'm the only bald person in this session. Brown eyes and wearing a blue polo. So anyway, Access Israel is all about making Israel fully accessible for all kinds of disabilities and in all spheres of life. And in the last few years, we are working on the future, making the future tech era accessible in advance for all. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Paul. Sam, you're next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam. I'm probably the only person wearing a black headscarf today. I'm blind. I am the accessibility leader for Procter & Gamble. So similarly, my vision is to make all of P&G's products, packaging, advertising, communications, offices, everything that touches our employees or consumers accessible for all, including everybody with a disability.
Excellent. Thank you. Irene. Oh, you're on mute, Irene. It has to happen once. Has to happen once. On mute. So I'm gonna skip you. Keep working on that, Irene. Christopher, you want to jump in?
Sure. My name is Christopher Patno. I'm head of accessibility programs and disability inclusion for this little company called Google. My pronouns are he and him. I am also wearing a blue polo. I got the inspiration from Yuval, but I've got a long gray hair in the front and wearing black glasses.
Thank you. Irene, are you ready? You're just being shy. Irene's kind of shy sometimes. We have to pull her out. That's not... Okay, Jody, you're next.
Hello, I am Jodie Greer. I am currently the IT accessibility lead for Shell. I feel like I have to say this because I actually leave Shell after 13 years next month. I missed the memo about wearing a blue top, so I am actually wearing a black and grey stripy top. I'm female, I'm white, I'm wearing glasses and having a really bad hair day, so it's tied back.
Marisol, you're next.
Hello, my name is Marisol Villena, and I work on the Accessibility Center of Excellence for Accenture. I think everyone knows Accenture as a consulting company, but I would like to give you some highlights of the Accessibility Center of Excellence, because this is a team that has been created for internally ensure that all the interactions from our internal systems are made with accessibility in mind. In my case, it's the first time I am here in TechShare Pro. It is a pleasure for me to be here and share the accessibility journey that we have in Accenture with all of you. Thank you very much. If I want to share my audio description, I would like to mention that I am a Latino woman, okay, with wearing a formal dress, okay, for this event. And the most important thing that I would like to share to you about this is that I am curly gray hair, and I feel very empowered being gray at this stage. So thank you very much.
Nice job.
You're Christopher.
Okay, Robin, you're next, and then we'll go to Irene.
Yeah, Robin Christopherson of AbilityNet. I'm head of digital inclusion, and I'm blind as well, so I'm not 100% sure how to describe myself. The last time I saw my hair, it was bright red, but I think it's kind of really dark, probably even black almost now, and grey. So that shows you how long ago it was that I last saw what I looked like. So I'm probably just like average looking. I don't know. And I don't know whether I got the memo about blue because I don't know what colour my shirt is. But anyway.
No, I didn't get the blue memo either.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
All right.
And I'm equally excited about the next 10 years when it comes to tech and empowering people with disabilities, and kind of up for the challenge to try and make it, you know, be realized by championing accessibility going forward.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Irene, are you with us, or you have to come in a little bit later? Fingers crossed.
She's on mute.
She's on mute, and now she's frozen, I think. I don't know. Okay, well, we're going to come back. Irene may be coming back in with this one. Anyway, as you can tell, we have a pretty amazing panel today, and we're going to dive right into some of the questions. Right now, the first one came to us, and it's focused on COVID, of course, because everything's about COVID right now. Has the COVID pandemic created or encouraged a greater sense of empathy across your networks? So I'm going to open that up for anybody to jump in on that. How has COVID impacted your organizations? Okay, Robin?
Well, I'm just going to start with a little story, if that's okay. So I'm part of the all-party parliamentary group on disability. So these advise the government and make sure that they are, you know, cognizant of the issues and the potential to help people with disabilities. And back in April, when COVID really hit, we contacted the Prime Minister and sought reassurances that the right measures would be put in place in a timely way to make sure that disabled people wouldn't be left out. And 4 months later, in July, we got a reply. And the letter from Boris Johnson was 4 pages of inaccessible PDF.
Wow.
It was a picture. Basically, they took a photograph of 4 pages of text and turned it into a PDF. And it said all the right things. It said, you know, we are going to do the most ambitious and transformative endeavor for disabled people in a generation. That's how it started. So, you know, that's brilliant. And they said lots of good things in it. But one of the first points they made was, first, turning to accessible communications. So I think there's definitely, we all are aware who have been on the conference this week of the, you know, empowering potential of technology and of digital inclusion. And yet there's going to be this challenge going forward to make sure that it's a root and branch thing, both within our organizations, within our teams, but also, you know, across the country and within government. And, you know, I'm sure that their hearts are in the right place. But I thought that was, you know, it's just so ironic that you could cut it with a hacksaw, basically. So that's where we are today. Huge opportunities and huge challenges as well.
Robin, it's so interesting. This is Christopher, that you mentioned inaccessible PDF, because that's a big deal right now. From the top down, you've got to make sure that all your content's accessible. So it's something that needs to be addressed from government as well as industry. So thank you for that. Irene, do you want to introduce yourself? And we're talking about, actually, on that, we're talking about COVID and how has the pandemic really impacted your network, your organization?
Okay. Thank you for your patience, and sorry for the technical difficulties, but thanks for having me. My name is Irene Barikirika, the founder and executive director of Enable, and of course, Inclusive Africa Conference. So in terms of COVID, I think the positive part of it is the fact that people who are doing projects in Africa, or even you have products and services in Africa, are suddenly realizing that people with disabilities cannot use their products and services. Of course, civic organizations have been trying to push this agenda for a very long time, but this time it's at the forefront of every conversation. A good example is financial services. You find that most mobile money applications are not accessible, yet all sectors are advising people now to start using digital products. So for me, my goal is to make sure that the digital accessibility conversation is going on in Africa. And I'm trying to drag all these international organizations to come to Africa, and we can all have a conversation and see how we can come up with solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. I appreciate that. And your point on the financial institutions is well taken. You know, there's been a lot of research that's been done from the bank standpoint about accessibility, but very little bit from the consumer side and how it's really impacting them. So that's an issue that needs to also be addressed. Yuval, I see you shaking your head. I know you got something.
No, I totally agree. But again, the lockdown was amazing, had an amazing effect, because, as you know, Access consult large organizations how to be fully accessible. And the change was that everything is now remotely. And government, municipalities, businesses have learned immediately the importance to be user-friendly or accessible by remote servicing. And it was amazing because it's not only about people with disabilities, it's about the community at all, because they found out that so many niches of the citizens having problems having digital services. So at least in Israel, what happened that the government immediately decided to make a very fast law upgrading the digital services and put millions of dollars in upgrading the digital services. So companies are now more aware of the importance of accessibility and usability for all in servicing remotely. So this is a good thing. And again, every situation in life, you have the upsides and downsides. You know, even now, you know, I think in the last year, the amount of conferences that all of us have been there, we would never be able to do that if we had to fly. No reason we let them fly so much. So this is like the upside of that. The network that we have performed, the global network of accessibility leaders for more than 82 countries, it's something that wouldn't happen if this pandemic did not. So we all hope that this pandemic will be a long, never really back, but in the meantime, let's do the best out of it and improve the accessibility using this situation.
Yeah. Good point, Yuval. Even though I tell you what, I want to go back to Israel. Amazing conference. So I'm ready to get back on the phone anytime.
I'm ready.
Looking forward to that.
That'd be too. Sam, do you want to say anything on this topic?
I'd like to build on what the others have said. I think for me, like personally being blind and with COVID at home, it works great when the tech works great. But then you're very lonely if something goes wrong. Like, you don't have someone in the office that can just come and figure out what the problem might be. Mm-hmm. Although what I've learned is that, you need a suite of tools that can help you. So I use a lot like Be My Eyes and Microsoft Support quite a lot. And that works incredibly well for me because I can use my phone to connect someone to my laptop eventually, because if JAWS doesn't talk, then, they can guide me step by step. And I think that's an invaluable service. And then I use things like Google Home or Alexa to find out how to spell things. And when I was in the office, I wouldn't be able to do that. But right now, if I need to know how to spell something, I've got Hey Google there and he tells me stuff, and I use my voice a lot more. But more broadly in like P&G, I think we were already quite well set up with technology. Like it's been quite an easy transition for most P&Gers to work from home from a technology point of view, or being able to provide them with the right equipment, keyboard, chair, or whatever they might need to do their job. But there's nothing like being in the office. I really miss the human company, though. I can't wait till we can get to a more balanced state.
Yes, Sam.
This is Christopher. Can I piggyback off something that Sam just said? Coming from Google, it's been really interesting to me watching the engineering teams sort of light up, understanding the impact and power that this has. The conversations we're having internally, I'm seeing externally, is really moved from the why from the when to a how. How do we do this? Because we've gotten past, in many cases, that question of why is it important, or do we have to do it now? I don't see people having that conversation. So I think the realization of empathy, but also, frankly, really great competition. I mean, you have Microsoft and Zoom and Google Meet and all these different companies that are bringing people together. They're competing on accessibility. I've never seen that before. So for me, that's one real bright spot in terms of all that's happened, is how fast the technology is evolving and how accessibility has become a differentiator.
Yeah, and the features have just totally, this is Christopher, the features have totally improved in all those platforms that you just mentioned. It's incredible. Jody.
Hi, yeah, I mean, building on what everyone's already said, I think it's actually been a massive eye-opener for a lot of people, because people who didn't have accessibility requirements previously found themselves in workplaces that weren't fit for purpose. They were finding, although technology can be an amazing enabler, it can also be a huge disabler when, for instance, your bandwidth isn't sufficient or whatever it is. So all of a sudden, empathy levels rose dramatically. And I think that's actually served a massive purpose to drive the agenda forward for accessibility. And it also has proved to people, it's not just about people with disabilities, it's about people. So I think that's going to be a fantastic legacy. As much as I would happily not have COVID with us, I think it's brought some positive to it.
Yeah, good point. Does anybody else have anything to say about what's going on with the pandemic and how it's impacting the organization?
I think one thing that I'm noticing, it's the global nature, like even with TechShare, but inside P&G, we've got communities now with no boundaries, like no geography boundaries. So people are sharing, and now more than ever, people with disabilities are feeling more comfortable about coming out and sharing their experiences, both good and bad, and that's also helping raise the empathy. It's making people figure out stuff that they would never have known about people with disabilities, and I think that's also really, really good.
Oh wow, Sam, this is Christopher. That's a brilliant point. And your point about, even though we don't have time to go into it, the loneliness piece of it, is was really interesting too. As we know, that people with disabilities, transportation is one of the biggest challenges that they have. And I think a lot of people now feel very differently about how they're living their day-to-day lives. So it's that loneliness piece is also very important. Irene, you had your hand up.
Yes. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so the one trend we've noticed, I think we do have various programs, and for one program which is our computer program for blind children, yearly we have about 1,500 students on the program in Kenya. And what we've noticed with the children being home, there's a need for technology, for them to have technology at home. But what's happening with the donor agencies, and I think it happens a lot, there's always a trend. So what's a new trend? The new trend is COVID, and a lot of funding is mainly going into employment. So everyone now is doing disability. But the problem we are finding is that people are not taking a step back to say, even if you're doing employment in disability, what do you need to take a step back first and think about education? Because in 5 years' time, if education programs are not being funded today, what's going to happen in 5 years' time? These children will graduate, they'll come into employment or higher education, they need to use your products and services, but they will not have the skills they need to be able to succeed. So what's happening is that a lot of donor agencies are focusing on employment, which I feel sometimes like it's a quick win. But the best thing to do, like in Africa, because talking about tech and disability in Africa is a very new concept. So if you're going to invest in disability, think about the future of disability, and education is part of it. So my hope is that donor agencies can think about, there are schools for the deaf, there are schools for the blind, there are all sorts of disabilities, but there's zero technology. Yet right now, all learning is taking place online. So you find that students with disabilities are still being left behind.
Good point. Thank you, Irene. So to talk a little bit more about this leadership aspect, what are y'all seeing in regards to top down? Now with inclusion, diversity, are you seeing a shift towards not just making products and services more accessible, but the whole organization as a whole? What about that? What are you feeling out there and seeing within your organizations? Robin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that something that we're seeing a huge appetite for, because there is this enormous and widespread recognition that digital is now hugely important. It always has been for a decade, but this is, it's digital first now. And it really, people, like you say, it's been an eye-opener, is that people are wanting to do it properly. Basically, accessibility before has always been a bolt-on activity. That's now turned through 180, and people are beginning to appreciate that it's actually inclusive design. Yes, the guidelines have the word accessibility in, whether it's web or on mobile, wherever it is, but it's really about inclusive design, and you do actually get benefits for every single user. So from our clients at AbilityNet, it used to be quite a transactional arrangement where they would ask for an audit or for some user testing on a product or a project. Now they are saying, how can we actually embed this better? So that's around training, but we've managed to formalize that in a brilliant process called the Digital Accessibility Maturity Model, which basically steps an organization through, and this is free to download, a very in-depth journey looking at different areas throughout their organizations, how they do things, their tools, processes, etc., prioritization, resourcing, and look at the gaps, look for the holes, and then plug those in a systematic way so that they can build a roadmap so that in 3 months, 6 months' time, they're actually going to be in a lot better place. Because that's what we actually need now. It needs to be top down, but bottom up. They need to meet in the middle, and that needs to be owned by everybody so that it's part of their day job, because this is actually for everybody now, particularly in a mobile first world, which it still is, even though we may not be leaving our houses, we're all going to still be joining Teams calls on our phones just as much as we are on the desktop, etc. So mobile really does require extreme usability because people are using it in extreme ways. They're using their phone one-handed. You know, they might have it out in a noisy environment at some time in the future, hopefully not too distant, etc., etc. Bright sunny day, small shiny sheet of glass, etc. So, you know, this is actually now for every single person, and we're seeing a recognition of that in the clients that come to us asking for our services, that they actually want to start embedding it now, not just make it this kind of transactional process. And that's a really, really good thing. Will it shift the needle so that in 2 years' time, 5 years' time, whatever, we see a huge difference? I also want to very quickly throw in a call out to Malin. She's such a star. She's, you know, a representative of the Norwegian government who actually have really taken a proactive approach to enforcing the law. And we've had sessions on carrots and sticks. I really want to see some more teeth. And it's such a shame that Brexit just happened before the European Accessibility Act was able to be enshrined in UK law. We got the Public Sector Regulations Act, which has seen a massive shift. And I would love there to be more enforcement when it comes to the other sectors here in the UK. And I hope other countries are looking at Norway and other, you know, Spain, other places like that and saying, okay, let's start being a bit more proactive because it'll be better for everybody, not just people with a disability.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, you know, that I wish we had a lot of time just to talk about maturity models as a whole, what you were talking at the very front, because I know you've got your organization does a lot around this area regarding organization. So do you have a few points you want to make on this?
I wanted to follow Robin about two things. First, in Israel, there's the laws for all sectors, government, municipalities, and private companies, all have to be fully accessible as an organization and technology. But Robin said something important, that they have gaps. The technologies are far away from being fully accessible. And I think that it's about time that we raise up the target, the expectation. We have to demand from companies full accessibilities. Okay, not half, not 3/4, not. We want to have full accessible technologies and services so we can enjoy and use those technologies as civilians like others. And this is not enough, because while saying that, you have to remember that we have to make those technologies available to everyone. And thirdly, we are not talking about two more things. One is training people to use those technologies. And thirdly, I would say training, and this is, if we not train the people to use those technologies, or the technology are very intuitive and very useful, again, we will still maintain the gap. So we have to deal with all the issues. And the last thing I want to say is localization. You know, I'm coming from a Hebrew-speaking language, and those English American spoken language have a much better accessibility solutions than other countries. Then I think the global companies, the leaders, should not only think English, and think also those rare languages countries that this is our expectation. Go for the 100%.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Marisol, some points.
Yes, in our case, I belong to the Accessibility Center of Excellence from Accenture. And I like to say that this is a living example of the investment that the Accenture is doing on accessibility. Because in our case, it's our full-time job in order to ensure that our internal IT that is being built for the 500,000 employees that we have in Accenture is done with accessibility in mind. And all the messaging that we receive from our leaders, starting with our CIO, who is Julie Sweet, or our CIO, Penelope Pret, talks about how accessibility is important. And we use those messaging when we are talking about accessibility with the applications that we work in our internal practice in order to ensure that they incorporate accessibility as part of their delivery process.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So I've got two other questions, and we don't have a lot of time here, but this goes a little bit off of what Yuval was saying. And the question is, are we seeing a shift away from solely technical aspects of accessibility, so more the technical aspects, and we're seeing a shift in making it more of the services and products more accessible? Are we seeing that shift? It's just technical versus the service and products? Is that happening yet?
Let someone else.
Sam? Oh, the Jody. Sam.
So I can't see the hands going up. So it sounds like I'm butting in, but
You're perfect.
Sorry. You want me to go? So yes, in P&G, we're definitely more than just digital accessibility. I mean, of course, digital accessibility is like the foundation. We need to make sure all of our websites are fully accessible for everybody. But then also we're looking at all of our products now. You know, some of you may know that we launched on herbal essences in the US, the tactile stripes for shampoo and the tactile circles for conditioner, so that people can tell by touch shampoo from conditioner. So, you know, my vision is that we will expand this to the entire industry so that every shampoo bottle has this tactile stripes and every conditioner has a tactile circles. So, you know, that's just one of many things that we're working on right now. And the really fun thing is that the brands have copped on that this is actually a source for innovation. And so we've got, you know, so much interest in the company at all levels, senior, middle, everywhere. Everybody wants to do this. And so there's a lot of excitement and action happening in the company. And I'm beginning to see that we'll be coming out with some new cool things in the future.
Very cool. Very cool. Anybody else? Service and products.
Yes, I want to say that it doesn't matter, because it's at the end of the day, we are the community or the clients are users. So I don't care if it's technology or service or whatever. Whatever organizations are doing for their customers have to be accessible. You know, I don't care what's behind it. As a user, I want to use it like everyone else. So, you know, we shouldn't even deal about the terminology about it, nor by the action. We want accessible products, services, technologies, whatever falls.
Yeah, good point. Irene. And then Chris. I'm seeing some comments come in.
Okay, great. So as you know, I'm going to base my discussion on Africa. So Africa is a very diverse continent with 50 plus countries. But the reality is that the challenge we face is that disability has been ongoing, especially in the civic space, for a long time. But when it comes to businesses and governments, especially businesses, it's been very slow to peak. Now everybody has discovered disability. So we are yet to discover accessibility, the technical bit, because we need to understand it to understand how it impacts our products and services. What has happened is that COVID has helped sort of expedite the process by making companies realize you are really not serving people with disabilities because they can't access your products. But we still have that awareness creation that's very important for the executives, for businesses to understand. What does disability even mean when it comes to tech? What does accessibility mean? Then how does it impact our products and services that we provide? So when I think of Africa, we are still steps behind, but I'm really excited by the fact that the conversation has started and we can keep moving forward.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Irene. We've got just a little bit of time here, and I've got one last question. There's some questions coming in and some thoughts within chat, which are very, very helpful. I wish we had a little bit more time, but I think this is an important question to ask because we've seen a real shift internationally, I think. And the question focuses on, prior to 2020, even 2019, a lot of the accessibility awareness some of it was focused more on the West Coast hotspots, and we've seen the shift in that. And with Access Israel and Inclusive Africa, now TechShare Pro doing the work, and this is growing. What do you think this means for 2021 and beyond? Because there has been a shift. Christopher.
Yeah, representing that with that West Coast, one of those West Coast hotspots, I want to say I'm actually really thrilled to see that the internationalization of this effort. because if you have too much of this happening in one spot, it becomes sort of a monoculture of accessibility. And that's the worst thing in the world that we can have, because the needs of someone in Kenya is going to be very different than someone who in Dubai. And the technical infrastructure may be common, but that top 20%, that the internationalization, the personalization, the acculturation of these technologies is really, really important. So I'm personally thrilled to see Irene's work and Yuval's work, and I'm honored to be part of it in some small way. And here with AbilityNet, I'd like to see all of these technology companies get more engaged internationally, understand all of the users and not just the ones that live in San Francisco and Seattle and Cupertino, because that's the real world, and we need to get out of our bubble.
Yeah, great point, Christopher. Irene.
Yes, of course, I'm really, really excited. And Christopher, I think we've been through this journey before. And what he's not saying is that Inclusive Africa Conference, that name, we were seated somewhere in Tel Aviv during Access Israel. And we were thinking of what do we name this conference? And Rama and Christopher and myself had a chat, and we came up with Inclusive Africa Conference. I think what's amazing is just to be able to see that finally we hosted the conference. We had people from almost 50 countries participating, but most importantly, people from different parts of Africa that would otherwise never have this platform. So when it comes to 2021, one, we would love to have a face-to-face conference because there's nothing as the personal connection. We cannot eliminate that. Number two, we have to figure out how do we continuously engage these Africans who are in different countries, because sometimes technology is an issue. You will find some people have very low bandwidth, but they want to participate. So how do we keep this community engaged? Because if they're in various countries, that's the only way Africa is going to learn about accessibility, by having people in their own countries pushing their agenda. So I like the idea of moving everything from San Francisco to the rest of the world. But at the same time, I think there's nothing as strong as collaboration. Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. If we don't collaborate, we will not move forward. But I think what you see here is the true power of collaboration. Thank you.
I do. Yeah, and you know, family, isn't it? You know, we see a close passion family now. Marcia.
Yes, in my case, the Accessibility Center of Excellence from Accenture, the team that I belong to, okay, represents the company worldwide. But I need to mention that I am based in Spain, right? And the bulk of our team is moving to be a very big Spanish team. We have grown organically. When we started, probably 3 or 4 years ago, we started learning about accessibility, doing all the different accessibility audits that we were required to be doing. And now I need to admit that we have a group of 30 plus people, as I say, for including people also from different sides of the world, but also a very big, important group in Spain, and including a high number of people with disabilities that belong to the team.
Excellent. Nice. Yes. Yeah. Sam, do you want to end this out, or Jody, and say just 2021? Yeah.
I would like to see more of a collaboration. I mean, of course, the face-to-face would be fantastic, but I'd also, I think it would be great, and if we can connect the West Coast or the European people with, people who have got expertise in accessibility, whether they're disabled people or able-bodied people, but connecting them with individuals in Africa who are maybe setting out in their career or finding jobs, and giving them, tips and tricks. And maybe we should start thinking about making relationships so that we can help people like us in Africa to succeed and learn from our own experiences. I'd like to see that kind of collaboration, and the virtual world allows that.
Yeah, well said. Yuval, and I've got all of y'all lined up.
Just a few words that what I love about what's happening, and I hope it just go larger and get better in 2021, is the working together, the friendship, the understanding that it's not sometimes it's not a competition, it's a cooperation, the network, and so all of us. It's not about each one of us. It's about all of us making a lot of changes that all together are strong enough to change and empower people with disabilities.
Great, thank you, Yuval. Just a couple points, Irene. Then we'll go to Masaya and then Robin, and we'll close it out.
Okay, great. Yeah. So for me, the one thing I'd like to say is that accessibility is even inclusive design is a very new concept in Africa. There are more than 80 million people with disabilities living in Africa, and they use products and services. They go to school, so there's education, there's employment, there's everything and anything you can imagine. We also have a unique set of challenges. So when you think about innovation, I think the next place to be when it comes to accessibility is Africa. So please join us and we can do this together.
All right. Yeah, Jody and Robin, then we'll close it down and see the video.
For me, I think we've heard the word collaboration quite a few times, but that's absolutely pivotal. The session before this, we were talking about an accessibility network, which is sounding amazing, and it's right at the beginning stages. I'm actually going to put my money where my mouth is and walk the talk, and I'm launching my own consultancy in January for accessibility and disability inclusion, which is why I'm leaving Shell. Because I honestly think it's the most exciting time for where we're at, and it is growing, and I think together we've got an awful lot of strength. So yeah, 2021 I think is going to be a good one.
Okay.
And I just want to reiterate, collaboration is absolutely brilliant, and I want to just highlight that we're on a platform that actually makes that happen. And I want to say a big thanks to the likes of Microsoft and Google and many others for prioritizing accessibility and inclusion over many, many years, that has actually put the foundations and now the really practical tools in place so that this global collaboration, and hopefully, great things will come of it, has made that possible. So big thanks, and we're in very exciting times going forward.
Excellent, everyone. Well, we're at the end of our time. We're going to turn it back over to Mark. I just want to say thank you. This has been an excellent panel. I've been honored to chair it, and thank you, TechShare Pro, for having this leadership panel again. Hopefully, we'll have it next year too, in person.
Yeah.
Mark,
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Christopher. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, I don't know if you can see me now, but I can see me on the.
Yeah, you look good.
You can see me.
You look good.
That's good. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Sam. Not mentioned. I did get the memo about the blue shirt, but I've got a black one on because I'm colourblind.
What's behind this blue shirt? None of us heard about it.
I don't know. It's obviously Yuval kicked you all off, and then everybody just joined in. So
yeah.
Anyway, what a fantastic discussion. I mean, as everybody said, that can continue really. And I think, in lots of different places, that conversation will continue anyway, because there's so many different networks that we're part of. There's so many different things going on around us that you guys are organising and that others are organising, that we're part of that community. But I do think that that's a fantastic way to complete the TechShare Pro this year. I've got one more thing to do, which is that Jenny couldn't join us. And as well as being a gold sponsor, Jenny's obviously one of the members of the family that we all know and recognise. So we're going to play her video to show us out. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your support. And I'm sure I'll see you soon, somewhere on the internet, if not in face-to-face. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we play Jenny's video?
Hi there.
Thank you.
I'm Jenny Leigh-Fleury from Microsoft, the Chief Accessibility Officer, and it's my due honour to close you out of an amazing 3 days of so many different topics, forums, and so many different perspectives. There is nothing more that I would like to be there with you than with a cup of tea, a decent newspaper, and talking with my friends and family, of which you kind of are in the accessibility world. We grow and breed like a family because we need one another in order to make a difference and to work together in order to have an impact. I think if there's anything that is grounding of these times, as I sit here in Seattle and not at home in the UK, is that, well, COVID has shone a light on how important accessibility is. It is a crucial component to inclusion, and there is nothing more that's going to bring that home than a pandemic that forces us to be in the virtual world, that forces us to be leaning on technology in a way never before, to do things that many are new to, and some that are fiercely advocating for a much higher bar as we go forward. I think this year has taught us a lot. And while I think it's been one of those accelerator years where we've seen so many different companies, people fall to technology, I think it's also illuminated the opportunity as we go forward. And so if there's any big takeaway, I think it is, at least for me, that we've got a bigger opportunity we need to put our arms around. It's still in many ways too optional to see accessibility as something that should be added, should be checked, should be verified before something is produced, whether that's in the physical or digital world. And I think we need to get grounded in the vision that is far beyond that, where it is simply there. It simply exists. It simply is. Whether you're sending an email, a document, a piece of code, a website, no matter what it is, it simply is accessible. And if it's not, then technology works to address that or to prompt you of that and quickly and carefully fix it in a way that is of the right bar of experience that powers anyone with a disability to have the equal, if not more equal, opportunity to consume that piece of nerdery. That's what grounds me as we go forward. Because ultimately society is telling us that it needs us to raise the bar. And it's telling us because we look at how society is growing, moving, changing. I look at unemployment rates, I look at long COVID, I look at how the community is growing, ebbing and flowing and changing. I also see the usage of accessibility growing as I measure what we do, but also growing in the industry. And that talks about how cool this is, how it's flocking people to this in order to grow it, and how technology is advancing that, whether it's in AI, robotics, AR, whatever it may be. There's a lot more wealth at our fingertips that, given societal trends, could really actually make an incredible acceleration here. I think as I look at Microsoft and what we're doing about this, well, we've done a lot, but there's always more to do. I'm really heartened when I look at how the conversations are happening with customers. We've got a disability answer desk that is receiving, well, record volumes this year. But I love that 15,000 customers every month are reaching out to us to make sure that they have what they need to address a problem, to get something fixed. And technologies like Be My Eyes are making that quick, easy. In fact, most of the customers who call us using Be My Eyes get their issue resolved more quickly than you would do on the phone, on chat, or any other environment. I'm also heartened when I see how the maturity model is working both internally at Microsoft, which is really my remit, make 150,000 nerds live and breathe disability inclusion in their everyday life and work life. But I'm seeing how that model is now beginning to have an impact in customer side conversations, and to think about accessibility not as a people hiring discipline and as a technical discipline, but as a culture that needs to be grown. You know, the maturity model that we have has got 7 dimensions, and it covers every facet of our company. And every year I use that in my role, and I encourage anyone to lean into it to sort of see how it would apply or work for your roles, to think about how mature is your company, your organization, your business, and what can you do to take that forward. I also clearly get excited about the nerdery. And that continues to push on several frontiers, both the first party of what we do in our products like Windows, Office, and gorgeous Xbox, and also how we power the third party ecosystem, which is so important to make sure that people across the spectrum of disability have what they need for every user environment. Quite simply, those scenarios are too vast for us to do that without the ecosystem of both what we can do and what we can power others to do. And so it's as important to us to make sure that we have narrator as a screen reader in our Windows environment, but we also power NVDA and we also power JAWS. That gives choice, it gives options. And I'm seeing features like Accessibility Checker, which is just built into Office, grow in terms of use and also grow in terms of how it is connected via AI to just quickly identify those issues and in a lot of instances now fix those issues. Alternative text and image captioning being at the scientific level of parity of human makes it easier to do that. There's no excuse at this point for anyone to be sharing a document that isn't accessible, whether you know there's somebody with a disability or not. As we know, 70+% of disability is invisible. I also think, well, there's amazing just strength when I think about captioning, and that's another area that's just completely grown in the last year, and how accurate that is, the quality of it, the details that can identify the voice and the name. It's got I can follow it, I can use it, and that's the feedback that I hear from customers, whether they're using Teams, they're using PowerPoint. It just provides quick, easy access. But I'm also seeing the opportunities. I look at sign language and how that gets more closely and quickly embedded into society as we go forward. So I am excited, pretty much on a daily basis, that's my norm. I'm excited to see what happens in the coming months and years. I'm mindful that this is not the year that any of us planned. I'm mindful that I'm sitting here in my home office with my dogs at my feet, with darkness in the background because it's winter and that means that it's dark at 4 o'clock here in Seattle. And I'm wearing a t-shirt rather than a business suit. My t-shirt is a claret shirt that says "The future is accessible," of course. It's different, but in many ways it's more important, even more important. And so as we continue to drive coming out of this conference, I would encourage us all to be thinking about how we up our game, how we, even though we're busy, hard, parenting, educating, and doing everything that we need to do in these times, we work about how we can partner together to have a broader level of impact. Because we need to disrupt some trends. And I believe that the timing is now. And I get really, really enthused to see what we collaboratively, working together, cross-company, private, public, charity, for-profit, can do by combining our mindsets, building with and through and for people with disabilities to create new futures that accept this as our norm and lean into it and grow it. The future is accessible. I tend to agree with that statement. So with that, I will stop talking to myself on this camera, and I will bid you all an amazing rest of your day, rest of your evening, and I'll go take care of my dogs. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you so much for doing that. Jenny's on holiday today, and hence she videoed in for us ahead of being away for a break. So what a brilliant way to end the conference. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us at TechShare Pro 2020. We're pretty much done now. I'm going to have a chat with a debrief, as usual, at the end of the day. But formally, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody who's made TechShare Pro happen this year. Obviously, our sponsors, Microsoft is the gold sponsor. Huge thank you for all the work that you've worked on. And I'm hoping Hector's going to join me because he's been so inspirational to me personally in terms of how we've pulled together certain sessions and speakers and some of the people who've come. But the Microsoft team generally, we've worked very closely with them over the last 12 months, and it's been fantastic. Sony, Google, and Barclays, thank you so much for supporting us, and all the other sponsors that have made the event happen. We couldn't do it without you. All the tech support, all the event team, all the people behind the scenes has been wonderful. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much for you for coming, and I hope to see you in TechShare Pro 2021. We're going to have a quick chat now. Hector is here actually, so I can say properly thank you to him. But thank you, all the participants, for being here. So thanks a lot. So let's pull them up and we can have a chat. Hector, you don't know, these two have got wine.
Yeah, all right.
All right.
So,
I'm going to run downstairs. My camera's going off, and I'm going to run downstairs and get some wine. That's happening.
well, I can't do that. I'm in an industrial estate on the edge of Brighton. I'm the one who can't go out and get any. So, but I can't hear you. Is that happening in here? I'm just checking with the studio. Something was cutting in and out then.
We can hear each other.
Yeah.
You're cutting in and out for me. Oh well. So anyway. Can you just introduce yourselves? You've all been introduced at some point during the day, but Amy, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I'm Amy, I'm the Service Delivery Director.
Cutting in and out for me, I'm afraid.
Can you?
You carry on. I think it's going out. I think it's this that's not working.
Okie dokie. I didn't do an audio description
Is it my laptop?
earlier, actually. So, so I'm 44. I'm quite small. Blonde hair and brown eyes, and apparently I've got a fairly continuous cheesy grin on my face. That's one of the things that I've actually had strangers say to me in the street, "What are you so happy about?" And I've got 2 non-visual distinguishing features. So one of them, apparently, according to a colleague, I've got the loudest woman's voice he's ever heard. So I'll take that as a compliment.
Charming.
and obviously my Bristolian accent, so there we go.
I think I'm a Bristolian.
No way.
Yeah, we'll talk about that afterwards.
No. So I think maybe we've only shared that amongst ourselves.
Yeah, don't know if anyone's heard us.
Just check in with my.
You can't hear us.
Hear us? Can everybody else hear us?
I can hear you now. They've put it on the speaker. Everybody else can hear you. No, you're talking to the internet. You're just not talking to me, so that's fine.
Oh, good. Okay. Charlie, do you want to do your description?
Yeah. So I was gonna say 5'2", but I feel like I'm adding a couple of inches on there. I like to think that's how I am. White woman with dark hair. I've got quite a blunt fringe across the front, which hides the terrible eyebrows. And I'm from the BBC, so as a change manager.
Thank you. So I guess that one of the things I can start with is this the first conference like this that you've attended? It's the first one I've really stuck at over 3 days. I mean, I don't know whether people normally do 3-day online conferences. It strikes me that might be a mistake, but I mean, it seems to have worked. I think generally, you were talking about the advantages of it in terms of not being able to dip in and out, for example.
Yeah, I've absolutely loved it. I think it's difficult to get your head around right at the very beginning because you're so used to a conference being in a certain way, in a certain format. But actually, we were just saying about the last session that I was in, having everybody almost join in with that session, not necessarily just to ask questions, but to be able to participate and voice their own journeys that they've been on or moments of the conference that they've really enjoyed. That makes it feel like you're in a room with everybody else and you can all have this discussion. Having that list at the side when everyone started to have these conversations and talk to each other, it felt like you were in a community of people, and I think that part of this conference has been really valuable for me. It was nice just to see people talking along, because sometimes when you're delivering something you think, how is it landing with an audience? Is everyone agreeing with me? Is this something that's completely different? And actually people were going, yeah, this is great, this is something I've been looking forward to. Have you thought about this particular session that we could run, or have you thought about this idea? So it felt much more like a community of people than just delivering something.
Yeah.
Very good.
And I think I mean we were saying it's the limit of 300 was the reason we did meetings that way, actually, and I do think that demonstrates that's the place to get right, really, isn't it? A little bit more interactive than the live stream, where you get a chat down the side. You do need that. You do need, I think. I mean, the panels have been great when they've been working that way, because the panels have been great people talking to each other about interesting stuff. But that community comes from that meeting. Of the 3 days, the sessions when I've been in there, either watching or chairing, I felt a little bit more connected to what's going on.
Yeah.
I think it's been the best use of Teams I've ever seen on an event, honestly. And I get to kind of jump into a lot of different events, and honestly, I'm just so pleased that Teams was so usable for everybody. And the audience in the conference had a lot of diverse requirements, yeah, and it stood up, honestly. And I know we joked about this a year ago, Mark. I was like, we'll do the live event, but we'll also do it in Teams at the same time, yeah? Because we want to do some of that, and experiment with Teams. But then COVID came along, and suddenly we had to do the entire thing in Teams.
Yeah.
And, you do kind of, you don't always know that it's all going to come off smoothly, yeah? Because there's lots of moving parts in the background. I know you've been working busily on that. But yeah, no, it's been really, really superb. And the interaction, honestly, I think it was better than the in-person interaction in some ways, yeah? You're a fly on the wall on other people's conversations.
Yeah.
And all that interaction in the chat really matters. Can I do a little bit of audio description?
Yes, please.
Because a few people have been pinging me on Twitter and LinkedIn and asking about this. And this is my Professor Hawking Simpsons character. People have seen it over my shoulder and been asking about it. And I do have a Professor Stephen Hawking Simpsons model on my shelf.
Could you turn my sound up, please?
So anybody who was asking about that on online, that is precisely what it is. Some eagle-eyed people out there.
That's amazing.
And where did you get it? From The Simpsons?
Oh, do you know what? I'm a bit weird, but I bought all of the stock off the internet once. I've got about 15 in my attic. One day I'll sell them off for charity.
So the kids don't know it, but that's their inheritance.
Exactly, that's right. I don't do basketball cards or baseball cards. I do Simpsons characters. Yeah. Very niche Simpsons characters, yeah.
But Amy, you did a session on the HE stuff, and I think you were saying there was lots of interaction, lots of positive connections being made.
Yeah, it was great. We did. We had lots of chat in the chat generally, but then we did a session where we were getting institutions to score their sort of maturity in different areas, and we used the Microsoft Forms document, and then just had people voting, and then the pie charts coming up and so on. So that was a really nice sort of group exercise to get a sense of where everyone was. So that worked really well. And what I've loved in the lounge in the environment in Teams, you can just start a meeting, give it a title, you can invite people to join in. So on the first day, I think I was having a chat with Chris from PwC and a lady who was up at 5 in the morning, had come, a lady called Kelly. She was in Canada, so we pulled her into our little room and complained that none of us had thought to buy any biscuits. So, really recreating that conference vibe, but without the additional biscuit calories. So it all worked out pretty well.
I have just realised you are ultimately also the Tigger that everybody said you needed to be, aren't you? I know. So Amy and I obviously work together. So I just realised you're the first person to tell me that you've run any meetings like that, but I shouldn't be at all surprised that you're the first person to tell me that you've run meetings like that whatsoever. It was just struck me, I wondered whether what happens in these sessions as well, I hope it's happening, and it made me think about it, Hector, with the face-to-face stuff. I wonder whether it breaks out of some of those cliques you find yourself in. It is easy at events. I mean, I was thinking about seeing everybody again this year. It is a bit, there's a family sense, there's a very positive sense that we do know one another and we see one another, but there's also a sense that can create some of those barriers that others find harder to break into. So it could well be that we'll look back and think actually that broke into that a little bit, and not that the face-to-face has to work that way. There's lots of stuff you can do to avoid that, but I think it's inevitable that I can picture myself in the pub opposite Google this time last year, and I can name everybody around me, and I know that they all know one another. There's that sort of sense, isn't there, that you do end up in that way.
Yeah, and everybody's a lot more approachable if they're just a name on a piece of paper, on a bit of screen, right? So I definitely feel it was like that, and I had a lot of people just ping me direct questions, through the platform, and I just think I probably did more Teams messages than I did emails over the last 3 days.
I thought that was really clever, how you could direct message people who were there as well, which, just really flexible. And I think, for shyer or more introverted people, much easier to start those conversations as well, so super duper inclusive, I would say.
Yeah.
So should we do it all again next year?
Yay!
I think so. Well, I'm interested because Charlie's obviously. I think there's about 11 things that Charlie promised to do in that networking meeting. I won't list them because otherwise, I think that you talked about this, Charlie, and what made me think of it was talking about monthly get-togethers and things like that. I mean, I think there already is stuff happening in meetups. It made me think of the fact that you mentioned Manchester Meetup, where you'd actually, come up with the idea when you're talking to Gareth. There's lots of physical meetings, and I don't know whether this is maybe some of what we're hearing is a response to those not happening, because of COVID, but they are already happening. You have those localized communities, and maybe the point about something like TechShare Pro is an annual chance to bring that together, and to hear those voices from those corners of the different communities that don't see each other. I think that's probably an obvious reason why you would have and equally for that reason, it has to be quite a lot of time you need together, because there's lots of stuff that you want to delve into. You can't do that in a lunchtime webinar, or even probably an afternoon would be really challenging. So that is why you need that more extended time to sort of go around the topics and dive a bit deeper into them, signpost out to the stuff that's all out there. And it does feel like it's an obvious link to the stuff you're doing with the network of networks, to find a way to connect with them.
I also think it's worth having a date in the diary that the rest of the world can come to Europe and have a kind of a touch point that they prepare for. We have those in the US, I would say. Yeah. CSUN, ATIA, these are kind of big events that the kind of the industry kind of just says, right, let's get ready for it. But I just think when you look at some of the voices that we brought to this conference and some of that leadership that we brought, just to sort of say, look, it's TechShare Pro just before International Day of Person with Disabilities. Get your message right. Let us know what you want to communicate. I think we do need that in the UK.
Yeah.
I think we've been a bit unstructured up till now. We've got a bit of GAD. That's really good. We've got IDPD, but for this specific discipline, I just think there's something about having a really, really good event. A really solid event that we can aim for.
And I would.
My wife.
Yeah, I would say as well, I think that the numbers that, because what the exercises we did within that networking meeting was we asked people to say where they were from and how many people they had in their network. These were accessibility champions networks, and largely they were the people coordinating those networks. It wasn't only that, but, and I think the numbers would add up very quickly, and you would only be able to do that online. I think. Yeah. I mean, you could envisage a conference of 3,000 people, but I don't think it would be very enjoyable. I think it would be the wrong type of event for that disparate network. It would be expensive for people to attend. It would be difficult to set up. So that seems like an obvious reason for looking at next November as an online event that's got the capacity to take that in and then learn from some of the interactive bits that we've done. I'm much more confident about teeing people up even to give them the instructions to say, we didn't really know this year how you were going to use it or what you were going to get from it. This turns out these are the sorts of things that people really enjoy and that you can really do.
Yeah, I think some of the sessions I would like to include the individual network champs to come along as well. So the scale of that is massive. If we've got 200 champs in ours and everybody else has got, let's say there's some with more than that, doing that in person is not going to happen. And over a lunchtime session, no one's going to get anything out of that. Whereas if we do something over a period of even 3 days, or a webinar or an afternoon where we do workshopping, having those champs be able to learn from all these different environments and know that they're not the only ones that are championing accessibility in their world. You've got different companies. It's a chance to network. It's a chance for them to make some connections and create their own sub guilds and groups. And they might meet people that are very similar to them working on something really similar as a project, and that's the support that they might have been looking for such a long time, when maybe, for example, they're the only one that's working on something in their world or in whatever product that they're working on. So having something like TechShare Pro for the last 3 days shows that is possible, and we can have quite a lot of people be part of something quite big.
Sorry, I just realised I could get chat to come in, because we're not chatting with the conference. That's the other weird thing about being in this room, is generally I'm not in that room with the chat.
Yeah.
I could possibly get, I don't know if there's any chat going on. I'd have to lose this screen to do that. So I'm just going to see if anybody, Catherine can send me something if there is any. Yeah, I think the other question within that then, for me, Charlie, was, are there already places, do you already get your champions together? Do you already network with them in the BBC? And because they may already be a place where people can join in. I am concerned that it will end up being something new when actually there's lots of places that it's already happening, you know, particularly with the champions as much as with the people running the champions networks.
Yeah, I think I want people to shout out if they think they've got a group already that's something similar like this. Tell me about it. You know, let's join up. Let's join forces. It's not an environment where it's non-inclusive, and we want it to be a secret club where everyone comes and we're only if you've got a network can you join us. I want it to be a place where people can have those conversations, and if they've already got a little group where they've networked with people in their industry, join in. You know, come and be a part of it, of course. Like, and you know, they can share with me the pitfalls that might not even notice of starting a network like this. So it is about those sharing ideas, and I'm more than happy for people to go, this isn't working, that isn't working. It is just about constant honest conversation. And I think if there is groups like that are already around, I'd love to collaborate. I'd love it to, I don't want to do something brand new if it's not brand new. You know, I'd rather be a group of us where we can all learn from each other and just be stronger because we're a larger team with more support and more resources.
So there's a really good group actually that's run by JISC in higher and further education that is on Teams. I'll introduce you to the lady Kelly that runs that, but that's I mean it's pinging all day long, and the amount of best practice sharing and solving each other's problems that goes on is incredible. So
well, interestingly, you see, I spotted in the networking meeting people asking how they could network within HE. And I knew that was there. So that was my point back to you, Charlie, saying, hang on a minute, this is signposting, not recreating, really. And equally, it might well be that group wants an outlet for some other conversation which isn't HE specific. So a bit more dot joining rather than just actually, you know, creating something new, I think.
Me and Gareth had a chat about potential guilds that will fall from this. So, you know, as a broadcaster, there'll be other broadcasters in there, like we've got Channel 5 and ITV and a couple of others that are in a group. And so we will face particular issues that might not actually be relevant for a lot of other people. So I wouldn't want to take up a whole webinar about broadcasting when, you know, there's some online retailers in there and there's some banks and finance. So these guilds are really great because you're focusing on a specific area with a specific problem, and people can still be invested in what we're talking about because it's not irrelevant to them. So yeah, it's great to have this larger chat, but having these break-off spaces means that you can have very specific, detailed chats about a world that you already understand, where you're connecting with people in that world. You know, we've got a couple of online retailers that have joined, and one of my initial chats, they went, I feel like I'm doing it on my own. I feel like I'm the only person in this retail environment. I'm the only person in this entire company that is interested in accessibility. I'm shouting about it and no one's interested. I want to meet up with another group. And so immediately they've already made a connection and they started off having conversations because they need it now.
So
cool. So
sorry, can I just come in on that just very quickly?
Yeah, please do.
But just that concept of guilds, or what I would call kind of almost like industry narrative.
Yeah.
Or industry-specific narratives. You know, that's something we're exploring at Microsoft right now. So because we're getting such scale of buy-in to the culture of accessibility and disability inclusion, but obviously we sell through industries, right? We have industry teams focused on education, on aviation, on media telco. So we're building, you know, what I'm doing at the moment is working with our industry team to kind of say, what is the disability exclusion story in those industries and how can we go and address it with technology? So as you build, I mean, keep me posted. I'd love you to link you into some real industry specialists who can then kind of go and become your champions. Because the other thing is this piece about, you know, we're still, I'm going to go back to the Casper Klinger talk, Mark. You know, we're still Denmark. You know, accessibility is kind of still Denmark shouting up going, listen to me, listen to me. But if I can get some of the industry leaders, you know, who are really listened to within their, because they're like the technology leaders working for Microsoft in those industries, to carry accessibility forward, but have an army of people who really want accessibility in their industries, I think we can get somewhere. You know, I think that's the power that I think we'd love to bring to the piece. I mean, just remember, I didn't always work for Microsoft, right? You know, I worked in the universities with people with disabilities using the tech. I just kind of find myself at Microsoft now looking at it going, right, sweet shop. I'm going to get you driving change in that industry. You know, that I think is where we need to, that's it's not the Microsoft technology as such. I think it's the Microsoft reach or the Google reach or the Amazon reach, you know, but you know, let's go for that digitally inclusive industry conversation, not just this, can we do accessibility as a discipline message. That's the one I prefer.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to jump in. We've got a couple of minutes left, just because I've got some lovely messages and because I need to go to the lavatory. So collaboration. Collaboration is key to creating accessible and inclusive communities. Collaboration includes private industry, leading experts, civic tech, academics, artists, non-profit organisations, advocacy and disability groups, and of course with citizens, including people with disabilities. That just captures all of that, I think. And a final one, thank you TechShare Pro for an amazing 3 days. Like last year, I've continued to be inspired by so many awesome people. I've also felt part of the Microsoft Teams development team. I don't know whether they mean they feel like a guinea pig, but there is nothing like bringing such a diverse group of people together to challenge technology, push forward innovation for the better of all. Here's to a world where inclusion for all is there and ready. Paul Hartley from the Blind Veterans UK. So we've got some others, but honestly, thank you so much, Hector in particular. That your moonshots, they're fantastic. I'm in the moonshot fan club now.
And what are we going to do next year?
Well, I don't exactly. I think you didn't, but frankly, you didn't get Satya. That's all I'm saying.
Some of the names we put on that original list.
I know.
But maybe next year.
Maybe we'll never know. And Amy and Charlie, thanks for joining us for this chat and your contributions to the event as a whole, and of course everybody out there who's listening and watching still. Thank you so much for coming. We've had a great 3 days. I do hope that what we've done is galvanise people, give you inspiration and ideas, of course skills and knowledge as well. But I think the whole idea of getting everybody together is that we feel we can go out there and do more to help other people, but also for ourselves, just to get out there and have that energy and enthusiasm to be the Tiggers, to be the Accessibility Tigger gang. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.